Ladies and gentlemen, all rise. Court is back in session. Welcome to another exciting episode of The Devil's Due. I am your host, Carl Duty. With me, as always, is a man who, if you mail in 6 flag points to thedevilsdue.com, he will send you an 8x10 autograph glossy. Mr. Drew Celestino.
Hello, hello.
How's it going, sir?
It goes.
Oh, the things.
Things are going.
Many, many things. So, yeah, folks, I'm not going to lie, it's going to be a big show. We got a lot of stuff to talk about. Later on in the show, we will have Dan Larson from Toy Galaxy returning to the show. Dan was very generous with his time again, and we had a fun little G.I. Joe discussion. But we had ourselves a weekend.
We did. And it's not for nothing. It has spilled into today.
Yes.
So
opening statements. Opening statements. Let's get at it. You know what? I'm gonna buck ceremony a little bit, and I'm gonna go first because I know you got.
Okay.
You got the majority of it. Yeah, I don't know what happened this week.
Wow, way to set us off.
Played board games Sunday night at my friend Adam's. Some X-Wing Sunday afternoon with my friend Reese. I'm trying. You know what? I know there's something from this week I'm forgetting, and I apologize because I know it had to do something with someone. I don't know, but I mean, from Friday on was just very, very encompassing.
Yeah,
so I'm just gonna let you go, sir.
Well, I mean,
other things happened,
and let's just get right to it. Friday was Wrestle Kingdom 13.
Yes, we did not do game night.
We did Wrestle Kingdom 13. We had a nice little crew over here. At Casa de True.
I'm sorry. I forgot. I know. Saturday, we went to a birthday party at Pulp 716 for friends of the show, Kate and Nate Lockhart.
There you go.
Their young lad, Teddy, turned 4 years old. And if memory serves, today, January 8th, is Teddy's actual 4th birthday. So, Teddy, from the Devil's Due, buddy, happy 4th birthday.
All right. Happy birthday.
Got him DuckTales toys.
Oh, woohoo.
Because those are a thing now.
What a time to be alive.
Isn't it? Okay, so.
Speaking of Nate, though, he came with you to watch Wrestle Kingdom 13.
Yes!
Did y'all have a good time?
Oh, dude.
Okay, all right. Dude. All right.
I like we've always said, we don't shy away from our passions on the show, and professional wrestling is more of a passion of yours than it is of mine.
Yes.
But the times when I get to partake with you are extremely enjoyable because it's always NJPW.
NJPW is the truth. I mean, it always will. Well, I shouldn't say always will be, but for the foreseeable future, it will continue to be. And the Wrestle Kingdom 13 was no exception. Tremendous show from top to bottom. Basically, the card was insanely stacked, and by and large, I felt that every match delivered in its way. Cody and Juice Robinson, maybe not so much, but the reason for that was that Cody had a knee injury that he had scoped out the day after the show. So, in fairness, if he was limited, I'm willing to give that a pass. Now, having said all that, everyone brought their A game to the table, and it's a roller coaster of emotions for a lot of reasons. The main event being the biggest high and the lowest low of the evening,
yes.
And that being the match of the night, easily Kenny Omega versus Hiroshi Tanahashi.
Oh, so good.
That was you bore witness to a excellent match in the Wrestle Kingdom lore.
Yeah,
that's one of the top matches I've seen on a Wrestle Kingdom.
All the matches were the opening match.
Kota Ibushi versus Will Ospreay
was insane.
Those guys are insane.
Like numerous times throughout the show, I stopped and went, I think he's dead. I think he's legitimately dead. And there were a couple times where you were right there with me.
Yeah, spoilers. Kota Ibushi did sustain a concussion in that match, and also possibly a detached retina. Just FYI.
If that's all he got away with, he got off light.
It's all in the cell, Carl. And sometimes it's all in the delivery as well. But yeah, it was great. It was, some people I've seen are actually disappointed in Wrestle Kingdom 13. I think the hype level was built to a point where maybe nothing could have satisfied these people.
Yeah.
Look, it was a top to bottom great show, and I'm not going to knock it for being, maybe some matches were shorter than NJPW matches tend to be, but the big matches delivered in big ways. So
the Jericho match where he DDT'd Naito on the table, and Naito just kind of stayed vertical for like a half second. And
Jericho ate that pile driver on the ramp, and that actually ended up tearing out a chunk of his hair. He posted a picture on his Instagram after that, and it was pretty bad. Naito, man, he sells the crap out of Jericho's offense. It's so awesome. That match was very good. Jericho at age 47, by the way, is having quite a career renaissance in NJPW, and it's pretty cool. And hopefully it continues. It's gonna his career is gonna continue. I'm gonna get into where we're at right now with all this. By the way, good for him. A lot of guys at that age 20 years ago in the late 90s, you know who those guys were in WCW, cashing checks, putting in awful work, and looking bad doing it. Jericho's out there. He might physically not be in his prime physique or whatever, but he's putting in the work in ways that I can't believe he's doing, and it looks like he's having a great time doing it.
And folks, if you're a new listener to the show, we definitely appreciate you. But if you're kind of sitting there going, "What are these guys talking about wrestling for? It's just stupid and fake and whatnot." Listen, back in the early days of the show, I said my views on professional wrestling are: it is a performance art. Yes, the outcomes are predetermined, but it is by no means fake.
It is storytelling combined with physicality, combined with characters, combined with pageantry and glitz and glamour and really high highs and really low lows. And wrestling has it all, man. And
NJPW Wrestle Kingdom was a performance art at its finest.
NJPW does storytelling better than anyone, and they do it in the ring. They don't rely... Again, it always comes back to WWE, and I'm sorry that it does because I really don't care about them. They're just not good. NJPW does not rely on goofy storylines and meanie promos and soap opera-y schmozzle kind of crap to get their stories across. It's generally guys who want to be the best, and they are going to settle that in the ring. And now there's going to be individual quirks to that kind of stuff, but it's all very character-based, and their characters are consistent, unlike WWE, and they tell long-form stories. So, when you see two guys facing off in the ring, it's not something that was just cooked up, over nothing over a period of a week or two. It's usually been simmering for months, maybe years, and it's done in a way that is completely organic and consistent with those guys. And it always, it pays off. One way or the other, you feel a cathartic payoff to this stuff. And Wrestle Kingdom is usually it's both the end and the beginning of NJPW's year in a lot of ways. And they delivered again. So, tremendous show. I'm glad you guys came over. We had a great time. I had a great time. And we enjoyed it. And, it's been kind of the afterglow of that, honestly, since that day. Sure, I did some stuff over the weekend, but really keeping up with the who's going where, what is happening in the aftermath of Wrestle Kingdom has been my mental place the last few days.
And Drew, what is happening in the aftermath of Wrestle Kingdom?
Yeah, I apologize, folks. This is going to be wrestling talk for a little while. Okay, so... The Elite, members of the Elite, Cody, Hangman Page, and the Young Bucks, they all had their final appearances in New Japan Pro Wrestling, or at least their final appearances for a little while in New Japan Pro Wrestling, because today was the formal, they formally announced it before, but today was the rally with more announcements and official things surrounding it of All Elite Wrestling. It is backed by the Jacksonville Jaguars owner and his son. Cody Rhodes is the executive vice president. The Young Bucks are also...
I couldn't tell Wrestle Kingdom that Cody Rhodes was affiliated with it. Oh.
As he rocked Jaguars colors.
Jaguar print.
Yeah, I know. But the rally was today. They announced talent. SCU, that being Kazarian, Christopher Daniels, and Scorpio Sky. They are elite. The former Neville, also known as Pac, before he went to WWE, and now again as he left WWE, one of the best wrestlers in the world. He joined All Elite Wrestling today.
Okay.
And Joey Janela. Who else was there? I'm missing guys. I know I am. But the one that, a lot of guys joined AEW today. They announced, in an official capacity, who should show up at the end of the big rally but Chris Jericho. Chris Jericho is All Elite Wrestling.
Nice.
Now, again, this is all really cool. I'm excited for it. They announced that in May, the second All-In show will be taking place. The first, obviously, was in September. We talked about that. 10,000-seater, the first ever independent show to do 10,000 seats. The first wrestling show in North America to do 10,000 seats that wasn't WWE since WCW died years ago.
Yeah.
So, the second All-In will be happening... in May, in Vegas, of all places, at the MGM Grand. So, that's pretty sweet. Now, this is going to get dicey. So, all right. I'm excited for All Elite Wrestling.
Yes.
Can't wait.
Yes.
There's one big name that I did not mention in all of this.
No. Hulk Hogan.
Let's not talk about Hulk Hogan, please. Kenny Omega was not announced for All Elite Wrestling, despite being a founding member of the Elite. Now, let me catch you up.
Yes.
Kenny Omega is contractually signed to NJPW until the end of January. NJPW previously had and has a affiliation with Ring of Honor here in America. They've done shows together for years. The Elite, Cody, Bucks, Paige, they were ROH talent that also worked New Japan Pro Wrestling.
Yeah.
Okay, because of their agreement. Kenny Omega is an NJPW guy, but he would do appearances for ROH. He obviously did appearances on Being the Elite on YouTube for the Elite. And, well, all those other guys are no longer in ROH. They are starting a new company. And now, NJPW is put in kind of a weird spot. So, MSG, Madison Square Garden, that show is coming up in March.
Okay.
That is a ROH NJPW show. They can't just brush off a partnership they've had for a long time to support these other guys who are, mind you, superior draws to anyone on ROH's roster right now.
Yeah.
They can't just break a partnership to go with them to share guys just because. In my opinion, All Elite needs an NJPW affiliation to really cement how serious they are, in my humble opinion.
Yeah.
And in Kenny Omega as well, being intertwined in all this, he can't be All Elite and be NJPW as of right now.
Yeah.
NJPW doesn't want to get rid of ROH. They don't want to work with they don't want to work with All Elite as of now. But our NJPW, however, does really, really want Kenny around for the foreseeable future because they have MSG coming up. They have announced a very ambitious 2019 with international dates, Western expansion outside of Japan, that they really would like to have Kenny Omega on these shows. Because, I'm sorry, he moves the needle in the pro wrestling world maybe more than anybody else. And I'm not just saying outside of WWE, I'm saying period. Kenny is has really delivered in a big way the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And good for him putting himself in this position. Through no fault of his own, really, he's now in this weird position where he's kind of he's got companies vying for his services, and all he does is show up and put on classic, awesome matches and deliver.
Yeah.
Nice work if you can do it, right? He's going to be very well paid at the end of all this, but it's the question of where he goes is up in the air. I don't know. I can't tell you where he's going to go.
Yeah.
I'm going to be happy if he stays in NJPW for the foreseeable future. I'm going to be happy if he goes to All Elite Wrestling, but both also will make me sad as well. If he goes to ROH, or I'm sorry, ROH, you're funny. If he goes to All Elite Wrestling, I will be upset that he will no longer be in NJPW because he has more to give there, and the shows coming up need him. And I'm going to one of those shows, and I really want to see him headline Madison Square Garden. And I think he's great, and he hit for the work he does. NJPW is like, that's where he belongs.
Yeah.
If he stays in NJPW, hey, great. Everything I just said is going to happen, but no, now he's not with the Elite anymore. And this new promotion that really could use star power to drive their business forward and really present a viable alternative wrestling company to the world in 2019, because believe me, we need it. WWE needs the competition. People need an alternative, a quality alternative. They're not going to have Kenny. And, you know, that hurts them. And as a group, I like seeing those guys together. They're fun together. And you know. So there's a lot of things going on. For all I know, New Japan might buckle and go with an All Elite partnership just to keep Kenny happy and around. They might have to if they want him that badly. Now, I should preface all this. This situation would be a lot more complicated if he retained the title at Wrestle Kingdom 13. Spoilers, Kenny lost. And that, obviously, I was very upset about it. But given everything I just told you about his situation, you can see why they were not going to let him keep the title.
Yeah.
So this whole situation is very crazy. It's a wild time to be a wrestling fan right now for reasons on the screen and off the screen. There you go.
Do you foresee if All Elite can hit the ground running within the foreseeable future, All Elite absorbing Ring of Honor or some of the other smaller brands?
The only one that comes to mind is Impact. And here's a fun story for you. Impact Wrestling allegedly offered to sell themselves to All Elite a few weeks ago. And All Elite said, no, thank you.
Oh,
because Impact has the TNA stink on it. That brand has been around for, God, I can't believe I'm saying it. It's been around longer than WCW was a thing, and it's always been kind of It had a brief flirtation with being quality a long time ago.
Yeah,
and since that point, it's been mostly terrible. It's been mostly terrible throughout most of its history, but it's limped along somehow, channel to channel, through various rosters of various degrees of quality, booking that has always been consistently pretty bad. It's not a good company. There's a stigma to it. So I don't blame All Elite saying, "Hey, thanks, but no thanks. We're going to go it alone and do our thing."
Yeah.
Impact, though, is in a bad spot right now. They're being put onto a very low tier cable channel, and this might be the death knell for them, like officially. Don't know that. They've survived before. They might survive again. Again, they've been around a long time somehow. But if All Elite were to pick the carcass of Impact, Brian Cage, Pentagon, Phoenix, Johnny Mundo, Taya Valkyrie,
and Lucha Underground.
They're in Lucha Underground, but that Lucha Underground is probably not long for this world either. So,
Gotcha.
All those guys I just named, I would love to see them in All Elite Wrestling. Absolutely.
Okay.
So, yeah, man, lots of fun stuff going on.
Cool. Well, that's
your wrestling catch-up for as of right now.
That was our week's. Dear listener, if you'd like to tell us about your week, send us any questions or comments to the show. You can do so at the following locations. You can go to Twitter and follow us at Devils Do Pod. You can like our page on Facebook by going to facebook.com/Devils Do Pod. You can email us at thedevilsdopod@gmail.com, or you can find all these resources available to you on our website, thedevilsdopodcast.com. Drew, that being said, we do have some questions.
Well, all right.
So we will start out with, I guess you would say, friend of the show, Mrs. Julie Duty sent in. My wife, spoilers, my wife. Sent a question, say, "Hey, Carl and Drew, I love listening to your show. Thank you very much, honey. Appreciate it. When are you going to have the wives be guests on the show?"
Speaking, well, I
mean, I'm not going to say I don't ever see it happening, because that would be detrimental to me, sleeping in my bed. And all joking aside, I think it would be cool at some point to have the wives on the show for an episode, because they've both been extremely supportive and helpful in this endeavor. So it will happen at some point. We just don't quite know when. I think would be a satisfactory answer.
Sure.
Okay. Moving on along to Mr. Cyrus Moore. "Greetings, gentlemen. Glad you had a good holiday season. I meant to email last week, but with the holidays, totally slipped my mind. Drew, a couple episodes ago, you graced us with a renovations update, particularly with a door that you had installed, but last week you left us hanging.
Uh-oh.
We are dying to know your current progress. Perhaps you've made a lot of progress, and you're now 3 doors down.
Oh, ew.
Or perhaps it's overwhelming and you find yourself muttering, the doors.
I would never, either case, never, not a fan of either of those. Things are where they were. We'll get there. Takes time, takes little manpower, takes a little patience that I'm currently lacking. So things are where they are. Hey, we're down here right now. That's enough for now.
Yep. Alrighty. Anyway, the purpose of this email, not so much a question, but something I learned recently that applies to something you talked about in a previous episode. A few weeks ago, you talked about how media can cross-pollinate. For instance, something appearing in a game or TV show can sometimes appear in a comic or other media later. I recently learned that Fantasy Flight Games, the creators of X-Wing and Armada, created a ship in their game solely for balance purposes. The Imperial Raider Corvette was created as an answer to the Rebels' Corellian Corvette. Then later, that Imperial ship was used in the recent Star Wars Battlefront 2. Everything used in Battlefront 2 is considered Star Wars canon, so a tabletop game designer made a significant addition to the Star Wars universe. I find that fascinating. He is right. They when they were coming out with for X-Wing, they had a version of play called Epic. So it's when they came out with like the Corellian Corvette, the ship that the Death Star is chasing in the beginning of the original Star Wars.
Yes. They
needed like an Imperial equivalent, and one had never really been seen on film or in any of the comics or whatnot, because the Star Destroyer is too big.
Mm-hmm.
So they needed kind of like that mid-range capital ship idea. So Lucasfilm created the Imperial Raider Corvette to be a counter to that, specifically for the X-Wing game, and then it got incorporated into the Battlefront 2 game. So yes, that ship is now canon. It's a cool looking ship. It looks like a speedier, like sports car version of a Star Destroyer. So
cool.
I like it. It's cool. So Cyrus, thank you very much. We appreciate your emails as always. Now on to Mr. Alan Waiters. Alan sent an email, but also asked a question earlier today. Let's see. Where is it here? Okay, yeah. So Alan pointed out today that it is the 20th anniversary of the show Batman Beyond, and he asked, Carl, do you think it was an underrated show because it came after the highly acclaimed Batman the Animated Series? I don't think it's necessarily an underrated show. I think it's got its comfortable spot in the lexicon of the Bruce Timm Paul Dini animated series. I think what kind of hurt the show is one of the things that Batman is defined by is its villains, and that you can't just do like a futuristic Joker, future Two-Face, future Penguin. You have to come up with the new villains. And they had a couple ones that were really interesting, but for the most part, the villains were kind of lackluster, and there was never really like a true
arch nemesis.
Terry never had his Joker.
I'm sure they tried though, didn't they?
So much so to the point that they had to bring back the original Joker, which was actually a pretty cool animated movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I enjoyed the show. It's got, like I said, it's got its proper place in the Paul Dini Bruce Timm universe. So now on to Alan's email that he sent us. Carl and Drew, what are your predictions for the Nintendo Direct and other video games that will be coming out in 2019?
Well, speaking specifically to the Nintendo Direct, I would expect an Animal Crossing reveal of some kind. And God, they have to show something of Metroid Prime 4.
Do they have to, Drew?
I mean, no. No, they don't have to. But I mean, we had a title screen.
Yeah, we had a
logo.
Screen.
Give me something. Anything.
Okay. I predict that I'll see something that I like, because on all the directs since the Switch came out, save the one that was strictly a Smash Brothers direct, there's always something in there that I would be like, yeah, I'd get that. That looks cool. I'm down. So yeah, that's what I think.
All right,
Carl. Do you feel like Bart when he sold his soul to Millhouse for $5 since Drew and I got you that awesome Christmas gift that is coming in March? No. I feel extremely grateful and humbled that you guys decided to give me such an awesome gift, but I by no means feel like I've sold my soul to you. And what game did you spend the most money on besides Street Fighter at the arcades when you were a kid? What game ate the most of my tokens that wasn't Street Fighter? Because it's definitely Street Fighter. Probably Smash TV.
I mean,
just because the
was
nature
a quarter
of
muncher.
The game. Yeah, probably because I enjoyed the game, and yeah, that thing.
It was designed to.
Yeah. It did well. I think I've said before on the show, I have the Midway Classics collection for PlayStation 2, which Smash TV is on it. My friend Jim and I played through once and calculate how much it would have cost to beat it, and it was like $75.
Hey, that's about the cost of a game. So,
yeah. So
but
there you go.
In quarters, though, it's a little harder to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Drew, is it fair game to challenge people who wear a WWE championship belt at wrestling events or any other place? I mean, what's the point of wearing a championship belt if I can't challenge for it?
I look. I see your point.
The logic is sound.
It is, but keep in mind the only title that is defended 24/7 was the hardcore title. So if it's a world title, I don't know. Is it on the line? I mean, I guess you could issue a challenge, but then it's on the onus is on the champ's advantage. He could turn down the challenge, right?
Sure.
So,
but then he's like looked down upon.
I mean, I guess those belts are expensive. I wouldn't want to lose it if I lost.
Okay, I mean, haven't you lost a belt recently at like one of your concerts?
This was years ago, and it was a toy belt, but sure.
Well, you still lost it.
Yeah. I mean, it's all fake, Carl. If I lost it, I agreed to give it up.
Yeah, could have maybe rematch, try and get it back,
I'll let you know when that happens.
Okay. All right, so that does it for the emails. Thank you, everyone, for submitting. We appreciate it as always. Now on to the news, which not a ton of stuff this week. We only have two things really to talk about, and they are like, stuff we normally talk about, but more in the Drew-averse.
Well, I mean, I dropped all that
the Duty-verse.
all elite stuff on you there. So.
Yeah. Well, previously this week was the Golden Globes Awards.
Oh, yeah.
And during the broadcast, HBO ran like a teaser for what is going to be coming for them this year. And one thing that featured very heavily in the teaser was the Watchmen series. We got to look at Jeremy Irons as Ozymandias. We got to look at the yellow-faced police force.
Yep.
Which I guess is actually what they're going to look like.
Sure.
I thought it was just something for a special effect. And then we got to look at Rorschach with a question mark.
Well, obviously, I mean, spoilers. He's dead.
Yes.
So I don't know, but you know what? I mean, look, if it's going to be a sequel to Watchmen, which that's the word, if his journal got out, I can easily see people taking up their own masks and taking to the streets in some form or fashion to, riot or seek out Ozymandias to make him answer for his crimes against humanity. Who knows?
Almost like Rorschach becomes a martyr.
Yeah, absolutely. Even though, reminder, folks, Rorschach's not exactly the character you should be looking up to.
No.
But in the name of air quotes the truth, yes, he was the purveyor of truth.
Okay.
Till he died.
Yes.
So
till he got exploded.
Anyway, it looks. I mean, based on what little I saw, neat.
Yeah.
Again, I'm just as easily looking forward to hearing it more so than even seeing it because of the Trent Reznor Atticus Ross situation. So, but hey, cool, bring it on. I guess until I saw that footage, I didn't quite realize that's going to happen this year.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, we are in 2019 now.
We are in the future.
Many things that have been coming for some time are
coming to fruition.
Yes. And then also we talked last week about a reported, leaked, rumored release date for Punisher Season 2. And look, we were right. Kind of. I mean, yes, Punisher Season 2 is coming out on January 18th. And we got some more vignette teasers of what to expect. And we got our first look at Jigsaw.
What they're calling Jigsaw. I mean,
I'm just going to let you go, sir.
Look, would I prefer he looked like the comic version? Yes. They are downplaying the physical scars heavily, which is funny considering they made a really big point of Frank smashing the bejesus out of his face in the end of the season 1. But I guess, he got better, mostly better. And
plastic surgery's come a long way.
I guess so. And they're selling the mental scars of Jigsaw. So he's kind of a fractured personality now. Oh, I see what they're doing there. Hey, cool. Let me see what you got.
What, if any, hopes do you have for this season of Punisher? Because I think as you get further and further away from the first season of the Punisher, I've noticed you're less and less inclined to like it.
Again, it was okay, but the version of the character that I want to see is I don't think I'm going to get. And if there's, you can tell me up and down that, well, for a TV show, it's got to be this way. Fine, I guess, but that's just not the way I want. That's just not what I want. And, I see them dragging it, like they're selling it like, oh, he's burning his pardon and they're dragging him back out of whatever and he's going to be who he's got to be. My thought is he was already that way at the end of Daredevil season 2. And then you wasted time for a year, like, getting him back there.
Yeah.
What's the point? Now you're going to have him be like the cold stone cold killer version of the character? You had a whole season prior to do that. All right. Sure. Show me what you got. Go punish some people.
Okay.
I mean, we'll see what it is.
We don't have to worry about doing the episode by episode breakdown, but we are going to review the season as a whole. Should be an interesting experience for us. So, that being said, I think that's pretty much it for the news. Unless you have anything else, sir.
I don't. I have been so dialed into wrestling. That's really all I've got for you, and I gave you everything I know.
And Spider-Man. So.
And I've been playing Spider-Man.
Lots, but me too.
It's a great game. Recommend it to anybody.
Yeah, good times. All right, let's get to our interview with Mr. Dan Larson. All right, folks, we are here once again with the amazing Dan Larson, who has so generously decided to come back on the show. Dan, welcome back to the courthouse as it is for right now.
Thanks again for having me, guys.
No problems. Great to have you back. We're really excited about this, that you agreed to do this, because Drew and I were talking, like I saw an old back of a G.I. Joe card. I can't remember which one it was. And I said to Drew, like, man, this might have been the best wave of G.I. Joe. And then he went on yojo.com, which is kind of where we were drawing from for this stuff, to find where, what specifically that wave was. And it turns out it wasn't the exact wave that was on the back of the card. But we'll get to that later. Let's catch up with you, sir. How are things in the toy galaxy? We've been watching. We've been loving. You guys have been having some great success. How are things?
I don't remember exactly where we were at last time I spoke with you, but literally before I hopped on this call with you guys, I submitted my redemption code for our silver play button from YouTube. So,
ooh, fancy.
That's our plaque. That's our recognition award for hitting 100,000 subscribers, which we crossed that threshold very recently here. Nice little end of 2018 Merry Christmas present for us.
That's awesome, man. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Yeah, what does that number really mean? Ultimately, it's just a number. Nothing changed when we hit it. It didn't suddenly move us to the top of all the algorithms or anything. But for us, it was a personal goal that we had set out to achieve when we started the channel 3.5 years ago. So it was a pretty great moment of satisfaction for both Greg and I to finally hit that number and see it roll over to 100K, and to know that we were going to get a little plaque out of it.
Nice. Now, do you find when you're jumping up in subscribers like that you are saying, okay, what can we do to kind of keep it fresh and new and keep the new people coming and keep the tried and true satisfied, or are you just kind of like staying the course?
No, it's absolutely a case of both of those things. It is part, Greg and I try to push each other creatively as much as possible, and we both get bored if we keep doing the same thing for too long. So part of it is, how do we keep it interesting for us? How do I find new things to talk about, new ways to present the information? How can he keep his graphics fresh? He is obsessed with making sure that our thumbnails are always consistent with each other. But then he also likes to keep them fresh, keep them new and on trend, as they say. So he is constantly revisiting the look of the show, the feel of the show, the design of the show. I'm constantly revisiting how I present that information, how I engage the viewers. On the other side of that, we're paying attention to what the viewers, seem to want. And, if you sense sort of a push towards more of a sort of pop culture umbrella sort of look at things, as opposed to just a specifically fixated on action figures kind of thing, it's not an accident. It is happening because that's what the audience is responding to, and we'd be dumb not to respond to that.
Well, we understand that. Like, you have a specialty, but obviously the specialty that we all happen to be in casts a pretty wide net that, you can easily engage in other discussions that definitely surround the core thing.
Absolutely. And I try to keep that in mind. Like, we put up a video that was about selling your collection. And actually a lot of videos that have been sort of me speaking, from the heart about what it means to be a collector and how that can positively or negatively impact, your finances, your life, your relationships, all that stuff. And when we put those videos out, we try to have those appeal to anybody who collects anything, or maybe even just somebody who might have an addiction that they're dealing with. So you might watch it and say, hey, Dan's really talking to me about my toy collection or my comic book collection, but you might share it with somebody who's, got, a shoe collection,
Yeah. It's the addictions come in many shapes and forms, especially when it comes to plastic and paper.
Yeah, I'm onto vinyl now, so that's a real pricey.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm not proud of it, but I am. So
Do you think you've spent more on? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dan.
Let me ask you this about collecting vinyl. Is
Sure.
it same as toys? Like recently, Hasbro started reissuing a lot of the G1 designs in repro, G1 packaging and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't help but notice that when I go to some of these, hip collector shops and stuff, there's a lot of reissue vinyl. Where do you come down on that?
If the original pressings are really hard to get and exorbitantly priced, I'm very okay with a new, fresh Magic remaster that I can get for $30 to $40. Case in point, like on Record Store Day on Black Friday, which is not actually Record Store Day, it's kind of a mini one, but anyway, Typo Negative, who is no longer a band, obviously, but they reissued their Bloody Kisses album on vinyl. Original pressings of that go for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars. So I scooped one up for $40, and hey, I'm very okay with that.
And so you keep that in your collection knowing like, all right, if I get the opportunity to buy the real thing, I'm going to get it. But for now, this is a placeholder.
Me personally, no. I'll never take that big investment plunge. If I can get a nice pressing at a reasonable cost, I want to listen to them, honestly. So to me, if I can get the $40 pressing that sounds great and it's, new and sturdy and looks and sounds great, I'm more than content with that.
All right, cool.
If originals can be had at a modest price, I'm okay with that too.
Drew, do you think you've spent more on your vinyl collection than I have spent on X-Wing?
I have a number in my head. I'm not going to tell you what it is. Anyway.
Dan, have you ever familiarized yourself with the X-Wing miniatures combat game?
I'm familiar with it. I've never had the opportunity to play it. I was very close. That's because that's like all the die-cast ships and stuff, right?
No, they're like plastic, but they're remarkably well-detailed and pre-painted models that you get.
I think I just assumed they were metal because so many of gaming miniatures are, pewter or die-cast or whatever.
Yeah.
But that's a rabbit hole I could have fallen down. Not even being interested in the game because I saw the different scales of the ships and the ease of building a whole fleet, and just had to say I can't even go there.
Yeah,
I warned him, and he dove in anyway.
And I'm happy I dove in.
I know you are.
That game is crazy fun. So we find ourselves in an interesting position here, Dan, in that we're addressing the possibility of rebooting and rebranding our own show because of recent developments in the Marvel Netflix universe, and you did a great video kind of highlighting those developments. So for people who may not have had a chance to see the video, but definitely folks, go watch the video. It's top quality, top shelf stuff. Can you give us kind of like a summary of your thoughts on what's happened recently in the Marvel Netflix verse?
Well, so obviously what you're referring to is the fact that Daredevil has been canceled.
Yeah, poor Matt didn't see it coming.
As have almost all of the Netflix shows. I think the only ones who haven't officially been canceled yet are Jessica Jones and Punisher, I believe.
Yeah, and they just announced the Punisher season 2 date, and I'm waiting for like the 3 days after the premiere that they say, okay, it's canceled.
Yeah, because that's happening.
Of course it is.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So yeah, no, it makes sense that a show that centers around the exploits of Daredevil, especially their most mainstream product, is probably going to need some rebranding. But I would caution you to give it a beat because I saw Vincent D'Onofrio on Twitter the other day pushing the Save Daredevil campaign. So wait to see how that plays out before you do anything drastic.
I would listen to Vincent D'Onofrio. I'm just saying.
I mean, if he's got an SUV handy, I will listen to him too, no matter what he says.
Keep your head on it.
Yeah, so there's a campaign out there, but I'm sure it's like most, online petition-based campaigns to release the Snyder Cut or make Force Awakens not canon,
That's not going to happen.
Yeah, I wouldn't hang your whole career on it or anything. But yeah, so I would expect that you are going to be having to rebrand that. Are you thinking just general pop culture? Is there something else niche there that you were interested in focusing on? Just comics or what?
We haven't had that long form discussion yet, but I mean, our show it's centered on Daredevil, but I mean, we do so much pop cultural stuff. I don't know that we need to revamp too much.
Yeah, like obviously the show reviews would see sets. We're probably going to discontinue those after we finish the current season of Daredevil, and then just kind of do review like Punisher season 2 as a whole. Drew's not very hopeful going in right now.
I have thoughts, but
but yeah, but as far as we're pretty comfortable with what our voice is and what our style is, so that's not going to need too much tinkering, just kind of more the brand and the name, things like that we're going to have to approach.
Sure. It's more about how you fit into those the keyword searches and algorithmic pushes.
Exactly. We got to get the system to work for us.
Exactly. There you go.
But we're going to be okay.
Yeah.
But what did you think about Daredevil season 3?
I enjoyed it. I assume we're going all spoilers. We're talking about it in detail here.
Yeah. Fire away.
From minute one, episode 1, the question was always hanging out there: are they going to do the death of Karen Page? Like, are they going to? You know, they introduced her as a main character very early on, and that was always hanging over it for me. And I always tried very hard not to read any spoilers, not to look at online discussions or anything. I didn't want to see leaked scripts or anything like that. I just wanted to watch the show. And so I watched every single episode with a little bit of anxiety, like, oh my gosh, is this going to be the episode? And I thought for sure heading into season 3 that was going to be, especially they're bringing in Bullseye, and that was going to be the season where we were going to finally address it. And then I read somewhere that she was going to be in season 2 of Punisher, and I was like, well,
so much for that. They did a good job of head faking you on it, because they set it up exactly how it happened in the comics. And right until, I'm not sure if you ever read the Guardian Devil line where that happened. It was in the church. It was exactly what Bullseye did right up until the moment where the priest stepped in front of her. Everything played out exactly how it happened in the comics.
Oh yeah. No, I definitely read the comics, and that's what had me on the edge of my seat the whole time. Now, I will also say that I don't think you need to have read the comics to still have been, involved in the tension of those moments and to be engaged by those characters. More and more, with every additional comic-based property that comes out, I'm less concerned about, like, oh my gosh, is this true to the comics? What happened in the comics? Because they just exist as separate entities, and I don't really care if people who saw, more people are going to watch Daredevil than read those comics, and if they don't know what happened in the comics or how it played out there, it doesn't really matter anymore.
I mostly agree, but I also think that it's less of a concern because whoever's making this stuff, at least in the case of Marvel, they're making it for a bigger audience, but they're really respecting the material for the fans, and the spirit of the thing is really kept intact. So, like in Daredevil's case, yes, it's different, but man, did they really get the feel and the beats right. Speaking as a fan, like, I have no complaints.
Oh, sure. I was looking at something on online the other day, and I saw somebody talking about Daredevil season 3, and the complaint was, oh, you know what? Actually, it might have been in the comments for our video about the Netflix Disney Civil War. There, it was somebody was complaining that when their problem with the Netflix productions and those characters was that all they wanted to see on screen was the hero. The show's called Daredevil. I don't want to see Karen Page and Foggy Nelson and all these other characters. Like, all I want to see on screen is Daredevil and what he's doing. And I'm like, that's going to be the most boring show ever.
Seriously.
Like, what? Like, even the Punisher, like, I don't know how you could watch, 13 episodes of just that dude on screen all the time. Like, you're going to have to fill a lot of time with him doing absolutely nothing.
Basically. And not to mention, like, the heart of Daredevil was, like, the supporting cast, honestly.
Oh, 100%. And you can't get away from it in superhero stories. Like, you don't make the Superman movie without, Jimmy and Lois and,
Sure.
all this stuff and Kent. Like, no story like that can be told just on that one character alone. You got to build it out. You got to have some tension. You got to have some drama and some other storylines to pick from, episode to episode. Otherwise, you're going to be left with 3 episodes of just Daredevil and Kingpin. It's not very interesting at the end of the day. I loved how season 3 brought it all back and closed it off with, the law firm of Nelson, Murdoch, and Page. I thought that was perfect.
Now, as a fan, let me ask you this. Did you, at any point in the season, in addition to the Karen Page situation, did you think that this would also be the season where, spoilers for those who do not read Daredevil for the last 30 years, did you think his identity would be outed?
I figured, I don't know how long the writers thought that they were actually going to, how long this run was actually going to be. I mentioned in the video, and I read on various articles that they thought for sure they had at least 4 seasons. They were planning for 5. At nothing else, they had another 3-season arc ready to go. So it's like, how many of those beats were they planning to get in this first 3-season run? There's, if you pick those top 5, top 10 all-time Daredevil beats, those classic, whether it's Frank Miller or, whatever those classic Daredevil stories are, how many of those moments are you going to try to work in, and how many of them work organically with what they were trying to thread that overall narrative as? I'm not surprised that they put his revealing his secret identity out there. Or I wouldn't have been surprised if they had. I wouldn't have been surprised if they hadn't. Either way, it would have worked fine. As long as none of it felt, as long as it felt organic to where the characters were going.
Yeah. Cool. There was a fake out moment I felt in the one episode that we recently reviewed where Karen was put in the position where she would have to reveal Matt's identity to her editor. And I thought that is an interesting way to go about doing it in a classier way than Frank Miller handled it back in the 80s. But I thought for sure that might be the moment. But they didn't do it. So now they never will.
Yeah, and I was particularly enjoyed, and I don't remember the actor's name off the top of my head, the guy who played Bullseye.
Yeah.
He was just fantastic. And I had seen a bit that talked about the fact that he was one of the finalists to play Captain America in the MCU.
Oh, my God.
And the whole time... Yeah, and I read that before I started watching season 3, and I couldn't get that out of my head the entire time I was watching it. And I was like, oh, man, he's like simultaneously, Bullseye, but he's also like Psycho Captain America.
He's a little more John Walker.
Yeah, exactly. And I was feeling bad for him because I'm like, oh man, they give him this great character to work with, and he really does the paranoia and the intensity, and they get him in this right position. They even tease at the end, putting in the reinforced spine and bone structure and all that stuff, just to be like, okay, yeah, it's canceled. You don't get to play him anymore. And it's like, well, you had your shot to play a superhero character, and that's it.
I'm bummed that we're not going to get any incarnation of a Bullseye costume, but
well, you got a baseball cap.
We did get the baseball cap.
That's always tough. What do you do with that costume?
I mean, even if just a mask, just a black mask with the bullseye on the forehead, I would have been happy. But I guess it will. Yeah, it's not to be.
I appreciated that they had the ball cap.
Yeah,
and just sort of references to that sort of bullseye sort of symbol. Just a lot of great character things. And at this point, with the interpretations of cinematic characters versus comic book characters, 95% of those comic book costumes that are out there, just I get it. I get why they don't translate them directly to screen because they would be ridiculous. There are a few that I feel like we got to give another shot. We got to give Superman another shot. I didn't love that super suit. It was fine, but I'd love to see another shot. Just a little bit close to the comic stuff. But the Daredevil suit looked good. Yeah. Kingpin looked amazing.
Yeah,
I just don't know if Bullseye costume works.
Maybe not in full, but again, just a mask. I can get behind it.
Yeah,
sure.
I can see how they could have done that. Okay, so
if he'd have just taken that Bullseye, the Daredevil suit that he had, spray painted the whole thing black, and taken the horns off the helmet, then maybe that's a passable Bullseye.
Now
suit.
You're talking.
Yeah, that makes sense. See, they should have just hired Dan to write it.
Available.
So let us move on from Hell's Kitchen hero to a real American hero.
Yes.
We hear, smoothly done, I may say so myself. We hear Drew, much more than I, is a huge fan of classic 80s G.I. Joe. I'm a fan of it too. I'm more of a Transformers fan, but I love G.I. Joe just as much. And Dan, you are a huge fan as well. And as I mentioned earlier, Drew and I had a conversation. I was like, well, what if we kind of did a list? And then I thought, we got to get Dan back for this list. So what we're going to do now here, folks, is we're going to do our top 3 waves of G.I. Joe figures with our what we think our best and worst figure from each wave is. So when I say wave of figure, I mean a group, a line of figures that's released all in one chunk. Would you say that's the best way to describe a wave, Dan?
Yeah, oh, sure, yeah. For G.I. Joe, it's definitely by year. And I did the same thing you did. I went straight to yojo.com, pulled up individual years. We're just talking about that initial run through, I think it's through 94. Yep. And just took a look at the waves to see what figures were released in those particular batches there.
So just a full disclosure, I got the lines crossed a little bit, so I didn't pick a worst in these waves, but I do have a top 3 per year, so we can indulge the conversation a bit.
Okay, cool. So Dan, you are our guest. We'll just kind of go around. I'll do our 3s and then 2s, 1s, etc. Dan, you're the guest in the courthouse. Why don't you start us off with your third best wave?
So third best, I'm going to go with 1986. And by the way, I'm going to preface all of this by saying this might be the most anticlimactic thing because we may very well all have the same exact 3 waves here. So,
well,
it's quite possible.
It's very possible.
So for me, I'm going to go 1986 as number 3. I also wasn't really paying attention on a worst, but I can easily pick out a worst right now. It's a strong wave. There's a lot of stuff I didn't get out of this wave. I never completed lines. At that age, it was really just about you're lucky if you get more than 4 or 5 figures per wave. So for me, even in 1986, I was 10 in 1986. At best, I had 6 of these guys. But for me, by far, the one that I would want the least out of that entire year's worth of figures would be Dr. Mindbender. I don't care what role he played on the show.
I have the figures up right now so we can get a good visual. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, it's, there's some outlandish costumes all over that line, and that's fine. He's actually more clothed than, say, Quick Kick,
Yes.
But Quick Kick works a little bit better for me. Dr. Mindbender, the monocle plus the mustache, the gloves with the cape, and then he's bare-chested. Yeah, that one never worked for me. That was never on my list of gotta have.
Steel suspenders.
Yeah, exactly. I believed that he was crazy enough to work with Cobra and develop all those monsters and weapons and stuff. Sure, but not a figure I needed to have. And then as far as a best out of that wave, I would have to go with the Battle Android Trooper.
Nice.
Loved Beachhead, Dial Tone, Sci-Fi, Lifeline, all those guys, but definitely the Battle Android Troopers. You throw that lenticular mechanical guts on his chest, interchangeable arms, robots, army build them. You got me. I'm sold.
Nice.
All right.
All right, Drew, you're number 3.
Okay, I didn't necessarily rank these, but I would. I'm again coming back to the anti-climax here. I think my number 3 though might be, and let me just click it to make sure I'm confident in this decision. 84 is my number 3.
Okay, so
and that's going to be. Your Baroness, your Duke, your Firefly. Now, granted, those are all great, memorable landmark figures, but I just think as a wave, as a whole, it is my 3rd favorite wave.
Okay. Do you have a best and worst character?
Best, worst. Like I said, I did a top 3. So if we're talking 84, we're talking about Zartan, we're talking about Firefly, and my favorite preferred version of the character, the hooded Cobra Commander. And they are my top 3 figures.
I was never on board with the hood.
Oh, it looks so cool, and it's so impossible to pull off in real life. But as a comic book visual, I love it. It's great. But yeah, I mean, talk about major landmark characters all coming in at the same time. That it's all right there. Worst, looking at this, boy, Scrap Iron maybe. He kind of looks a little clunky next to a lot of the other guys.
He had a sweet accessory though. Dude brought a very big, knife to a rock fight.
True, he had a missile launcher.
He was like, I don't need a gun. I'm just going to rock this, missile launcher.
Then again, there's also a case to be made for basically unusable Deep Six.
Yeah.
Cool in the cartoon, but the toy, not so much.
Yeah.
That's my number 3.
Well, he had the diving gimmick, didn't he?
He did.
Okay.
Yes, one of the few characters who had a built-in gimmick, but in his case, unlike a character like Zartan, he suffered from his gimmick.
Yes.
Yeah. The memory serves, all he could move was his arms.
Yep.
All right.
That's correct.
Okay, so my number 3, I think of my 3 selections, my number 3 will probably be the most controversial. My number 3 is Wave 1, 1982.
Man, okay.
Just kind of the one that started it all. My best figure from the line is the Cobra Officer. I've always found it to be like a very striking design, especially when you set it against the background of all the other figures that came out in that wave. Just very, I like the black or the black and the blue with the silver Cobra. My worst figure from the line, and this is probably going to be heresy, but I gotta go with Snake Eyes.
Oh, you bite your tongue.
I'm sorry. There's just like the future versions of the character were so much better, but this initial version, and Dan, I saw one of your videos on this where you mentioned like there's a certain level of genius in just kind of putting an unpainted character out there, and I'm not going to argue with that, but at the same time, I kind of like just a little something to accent the design of the character, because like when you look at him against the backdrop of the other characters that were released in that wave, he looks unfinished. So
I'll be honest, until I was an adult collector, it never occurred to me that he was unpainted. Like that was just never something that crossed my mind as a kid. I found that out later in life, and I was like, yeah, no, that makes business sense, and it makes total sense when I look at it. I agree with you. That said, later versions of that mold would be released in different lines years and years later, the swivel arm versions and stuff, but it's that same mold. And they would add paint to it, different color treatments and stuff, and it just never looked right to me. Yeah, you're totally correct. His buckle should be painted. His, something there should have, like just the snaps on his buttons or whatever. Yeah. But I can't see it as anything other than what it is. And for my money, 82 didn't make my list. But you can stick Short Fuse, like put him in a trash can. I don't care. I don't need that guy.
Poor Grunt was just used as an army builder.
I'm not gonna lie. I'm looking at it right now, and you said Short Fuse, and I just said which one is Short Fuse, because the Wave 1 is just so generic.
But
I do. Like you said, I give it credit for being the thing that started it.
Yeah, and it's not just it's the wave where it was closest to, like, for lack of a better term, real military.
Absolutely. Yep. It was less about the sort of colorful designs of the characters and the very strange specializations, more so about the specific, like, let's cartoonify, the military.
When it get to, like, the late 80s, early 90s, where all neon, everywhere as the eye can see.
Sure.
Actually, that reminds me, I did have written here an honorable mention for my list is Wave 12 from 1993, solely for the inclusion of Street Fighter 2.
I did not include Street Fighter in my list, so sorry, man.
Did I?
Okay, so Dan, your number 2.
My number 2 is going to be 1984. It's just mentioned as previously. Carl or Drew? I'm not sure which one you mentioned it.
Yep.
Drew mentioned it. Okay, so I'm going to go 84 as my number 2. Basically, what I did to determine what I thought the best lists were was I just took all of those years, probably stopped around like 88, because after that, none of it mattered. And I just
he's not wrong, folks. Of, he's not wrong.
A quick batch of like, okay, these are really good figures from this wave, and then I just stacked them up and said, who's got the most good figures, you know? And so 1984 for me came in second, bottom of the barrel for me. It's either going to be Hooded Cobra Commander or Deep Six. Deep Six for functionality and Hooded Cobra Commander, because just, man, I love that mirrored faceplate. For as much as you like the hood, I prefer the mirrored faceplate. And for me, it was growing up. It was my brother and I never got the regular Cobra Commander. We kind of got in just like half a year too late, and we never actually tracked down the original Cobra Commander. So we got the mail away Hooded Cobra Commander. And it was like, you know, my parents surprised us with it. It was like, oh, look what came in the mail today. And we were like, oh, cool. Who's this? What is this? It's like, you take his head off. You take his head off and he looks like a ghost from Pac-Man, you know? It's like, going on there. So he's probably at the bottom of my list there. At the top, it's Storm Shadow. It's Storm Shadow all day.
Wow.
And as much as I am disappointed that the line eventually turns into Cobra Ninjas versus G.I. Joe Ninjas, there are very few figures in my lifetime that have been so mesmerizingly, amazingly just like satisfying to acquire than Storm Shadow. It was the immediate status within your friends community, but it was also just an amazing action figure, like anything else you owned.
See, for me, but the status and the instant impact, it's got to be Firefly, and from that year, that is.
And you're right, and that's exactly how it was. Some of the kids got Storm Shadow, some of the kids got Firefly, but it was the same reaction.
That urban camo, it's something. There's something about it. All right.
Well, it's the masked man. You know, all you can see are the eye. Anybody can be in that suit. You know, that sort of thing.
I think also Storm Shadow's accessories set him apart from the rest of the line up to that point as well, because he came with so much stuff,
and it was all very his stuff.
Yeah.
Nothing superfluous.
And it was the little things like the fact that you could put his swords in his backpack.
Yeah.
Was just so awesome.
Well, and that was around the time that ninjas were hot.
Yeah.
It was the hot thing to find, and everybody wanted to start cashing on that ninja thing. I don't know if either of you are familiar with Mego's Eagle Force line, which was hitting about the same time as G.I. Joe initially, 82, 83. Those are the like 3-inch tall, 5 points of articulation. They were die-cast metal figures.
Whoa.
Vaguely.
They had who was blue. His name was Savitar. And I remember I got Storm Shadow and my best friend got Savitar. And we were both like, who's got the better figure? It's hard to say.
Okay, so Drew, your second best wave?
Second best wave. Well, I threw 84 under the bus there, so it's going to come down to what I'm going to refer to as...
Well, 84 was your third best.
That's right. I'm sorry. So my second best, it's going to come down to one of the others in what I'm going to call the Holy Trilogy. My second best, it's going to be 1986. Again, we're all kind of in the same ballpark, I feel. 86. And my favorite figures there are going to be the Battle Android Trooper. The regular stock Cobra Viper, I think, is an awesome, awesome figure. He had a cool gun. The colors popped, and I love the helmet and the faceplate on this figure, more so than on Cobra Commander. The Cobra Viper is just a classic design that rules hard. And from the Joe's perspective, because I'm always going to pick the Cobra designs, like if you look at my list, it's mostly Cobra guys because they just look so cool. But one of the best Joe designs is in this year, and that is Low Light.
Oh yeah, the
Sniper.
The G.I. Joe Sniper.
He looks so cool.
He had like I don't want to say like twisted episode of the show, but he had like a really psychological episode of the show, if memory serves, where he like dealing with his past and not sleeping and nightmares. And
that sounds right. Any recollections, Dan?
Yeah, that was kind of his thing, was that he didn't sleep. Like he was sort of the always on guard, always watching. Everybody else is asleep and he's on post.
Huh.
Always liked that figure.
Yeah, it was a sweet looking figure. So
It's
my
funny because it always comes down to, your favorites, the ones that really stand out for you. And you would describe your favorite the same way I would describe my favorite. And it really comes down to which one did you own?
To be honest, I had a lot of these. Sad story. I had like probably hundreds of GI Joes, and they were all stolen from me by a much former friend back in my youth. So, yeah, I never saw him again. But 86, man, what a year! Sci-fi with the green what huge year.
So my second favorite wave is Wave 3, 1984. So Dan and I are kind of on the same page there. I also have a side note here that I felt this was the best wave for vehicles as well, because you got the Cobra Rattler, you've got the vehicle that Deep Six came with, the Sea Shark, was it?
I believe it was a Sea Shark. Yeah,
something.
The flying submarine shark.
Yeah, Shark. You had the whale, the G.I. Joe hovercraft.
Oh, the hovercraft.
You had the Cobra water moccasin, which I just thought was fantastic. I actually preferred that over the whale. I think it was just kind of like the best vehicle wave. So I actually did.
Well, yeah. The Rattler hits in that wave, and the Rattler is just a signature piece. Just amazing.
I'm sorry to
go ahead.
Squash a beef between Carl and I, Dan. The better plane, the Rattler or the Night Raven?
The Rattler. It's not even a question.
Yeah, see? Told you.
Y'all need more stealth in your life.
You can't deny that firepower. Look, I love them both. I'm a jet guy too. I'm an airplane nut. I love going to air shows. I've got all the names and visuals and all that stuff memorized. My father was in the Navy. He was with VF-41, the Black Aces, F-14s at the time that Top Gun was coming out, and the Sky Striker was big. All that stuff.
Yeah.
I grew up in that stuff, and as much as I love that Night Raven, you can't beat the vertical takeoff capability of the Rattler and all that firepower.
Yeah. What could the Night Raven
Although
do, Drew?
Drone is cool.
The drone was cool. I played with the drone a lot. I played with the drone more than I played with the Night Raven. But what could the Night Raven do, Drew? It could shoot backwards.
But it looks so cool.
Really cool. And then they chromed it out for Force.
Yeah.
So I actually did two for these, because like when I was picking my best, I only picked figures that were released on card. I didn't consider any like the vehicle drivers or whatnot. So I actually did two for these. I did a best vehicle figure and a worst vehicle figure. Worst vehicle figure, obviously Deep Six, for all the reasons we mentioned. I always kind of used him as the Joe weapons tester, in that they would shoot at him to test the weapons, because it looked kind of like a suit of armor. The best vehicle driver was Wild Weasel. Just like looked so cool. Like the maps on the legs and just the color dynamic of him, the way his helmet was done. I'm a sucker for
pilots, and Wild Weasel is amazing. Strato Viper, obviously not from '84, but Strato Viper is another one of my just all-time favorite figures.
Yeah,
but Night Raven.
Yeah. As far as the carded figures go, my worst figure was Blowtorch. Just because, like, unless he's standing in the middle of a fire, what is he camouflaged from? Just, like, look at that dude. He's like, he screams, "Shoot here." Right here. This bright orange and red thing. Like, yeah. He was a
don't put him in the jungle for several reasons.
Yeah, exactly. He was a 90s G.I. Joe figure before the 90s hit. My best figure from the line was Storm Shadow. For all the reasons that Snake Eyes was my worst figure of the launch line, Storm Shadow is the best figure. Like, he's minimalistic, but just enough to kind of set him apart, and what sets him apart really works well.
All right.
So,
well, I will not begrudge you.
Okay. All right. I appreciate that. So, okay, Dan, number one, best wave. What is yours, sir?
All right, so it's ultimately it's really G.I. Joe is defined by that 3-year period, 84, 85, 86. So 85 is going to be my number one here, just stacked with really fantastic figures. It's the one that really just sets the line for the rest of its run. And at the bottom of that, stack of figures. Such a good. All the Dreadnoks are in. Well, the initial Dreadnoks are in there, but I would probably have to put. I would probably have to put the Televipers at the bottom.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at them offset from a lot of the rest of the line, they do seem kind of bland.
Yeah, I never got into them. Communications guys, and that's admitting that there's a dude in that wave, that looked James Hetfield, and he's wearing a leather vest and that sort of thing, and I still put the Televipers below that. Best, obviously, this is no surprise to anybody. It's version 2 Snake Eyes. Now we're just talking about Snake Eyes needing more paint apps. This one doesn't have much more paint on it than the first one.
He doesn't, but the accents, like, he's got the paint in the right spots.
Right. And it, to me, I get that sort of, again, pushes it more in that ninja direction. But that's not a ninja costume. Storm Shadow's got a ninja costume. That costume that Snake Eyes is wearing there, that wasn't considered ninja until later on when the whole ninja thing sort of got set in. And it was like that became associated with his ninja turn. That's still like, I don't even know what that is. Medieval combat. I don't know what to call that. It's just beautiful, and it was just like Storm Shadow the year before. It was this thing that just like captivated me to the point where I was just like, I don't know, I can't even express. Like, it was just such an amazing look and an inspirational thing that he comes with a sword and he's got a arrow launcher on his wrist and a wolf and a machine gun. What is this thing supposed to be? Like, it was marketed to me directly, and it sang. It was just perfect.
He's really covering every possible combat situation he can encounter.
And looking cool doing it.
He's ready to go. He's got pockets everywhere. I mean, talk about being ahead of his time. This is long before Rob Liefeld ever, applied pouches to everything. He's got pouches on his ankles, pouches on his biceps,
Well, you got to keep your snacks somewhere in the battlefield.
Fig Newtons and whatnot.
Well, you got dog treats on one ankle, Snake Eyes treats on the other ankle.
Yep.
Exactly.
This line actually does have my personal favorite Joe character, not so much figure, but Bazooka. Just because I love the idea of someone dim-witted and clumsy, so let's give him a bazooka. It's fantastic. All right, Drew, so what is your number one?
I seem to be right in line with Dan. Rounding out the holy trilogy of Joe line here, 1985 is the top, my top. I mean, look,
it's a killer lineup. Like, I'm looking at it right now on screen. Folks, we'll put a link
to all of this. Don't worry.
This, yeah.
When I made my list, like I said, I got my lines crossed, and I said top 3 figures per year. And I could not possibly pick only 3 out of this year. Every single figure in this wave is just awesome. And they're all characters and they're all designs Like, this was the one that, like, etched everything into a kid's brain.
Yeah.
You think G.I. Joe, I think of most of these characters.
I always had a problem with Quick Kick.
Why?
And the show didn't help.
Okay.
Because this is like a military toy line on battlefields and whatnot. And I'll grant you ninjas.
Yes.
I'll grant you ninjas.
Okay.
But the dude going into battle barefooted with a couple throwing stars and some nunchucks. And in the show, he always got his tail handed to him by Storm Shadow. As he should. So it was a character / figure that I just never did anything for me.
All right.
Yeah, no, it literally makes no sense that he would be there. His military specialty, I think, is martial arts expert, but he's also I think he's like a trainer for the G.I. Joes.
A trainer?
He's sort of he's like a physical fitness guy for the team. Because I think this is just before we get before Slaughter.
This is before Slaughter.
Yeah, that sash, with the ninja stars tucked into it. I don't even know how that works, even if he's not in active combat.
Yeah,
none of that suit makes sense to me, and yet there it is again. It's an iconic design, and he was important on the show, and you just learned to love him.
If I had to pick a least favorite, though, there's a dud in every wave. Maybe I would actually go with Toll Booth as being my least favorite figure in that wave, and he was the driver of the thing, the bridge layer thing. But he always kind of looked goofy to me. He just looked kind of derpy.
I had that vehicle, and I did not play with it a lot.
So yeah.
Because there's nothing really exciting about putting a bridge down.
No, not really.
Yeah.
The challenge was always trying to find the right space that needed to be traversed. There was never that like, oh, this is the perfect cavern that can only, this bridge is the exact right size to fit this exact cavern for the Joes. It's just too deep for us to go down and come up the other side. It's too long to go all the way around, so we need this exact size bridge.
Yeah,
and this guy to drive it.
I think
exactly.
Just,
but I did appreciate that he came with a sledgehammer.
Yeah.
I mean, because when everyone else is firing off rockets and shooting guns, that's what you want—a sledgehammer. Someone's got to fight Road Pig.
Well, he's more the he's more the logistics guy. You're putting down bridges, setting up tents. Like he's gonna. If the Joes need a battlefield place to take lunch, all that stuff, he's got the tent ready to get when they get back.
All right.
I actually like looking at this line on your screen, Drew. I think my favorite figure from this line was the Crimson Guard.
Yes.
Just the design of it. Like, I think ultimately the Cobra designs conveyed more functionality within a military structure than the Joe designs. Like they were more uniformed, a lot of them, and had like specific role players than a lot of the Joes, because all the Joes were like so unique.
Right.
You didn't have like, you saw the green shirts in the show,
but there was no figure for the green shirts.
Yeah, you use Grunt.
Right. So, Cobra had, legions of these faceless guys in various costumes for various reasons.
Yeah. So my number one wave is the 1986 wave.
See,
yeah, we're folks, we're all kind of in the same age group here. We all hit G.I. Joe around the same time. So, but trust us, you go and look at anything that most of the things that came after this, we're in the prime Joe time here. So my best, it was hard to pick a best figure from this because it came down to Dial Tone, Beachhead, and the Cobra Bat.
And they're all great.
Ultimately, I went with the Cobra Bat because just for the same reasons Dan mentioned, the lenticular mechanical chest, the multiple arm options, it just looked so cool and was just
packed with accessories. Dial Tone, all Dial Tone came with was his radio backpack and his gun. That bat, he's got like 6 different things in the box.
Yeah, but the thing though is like got me on Dial Tone, and it was such a simple thing, but I always thought it was the coolest feature was the communication mic that would come down off the backpack.
It's funny. I completely agree with you 100%, and it's one of the dumbest little like insignificant things.
Exactly.
But you're like, oh, that is what made it awesome.
Yeah, like that's so cool.
I will say Dial Tone's machine gun is one of the best machine guns in the Joe line.
It really is. You're right.
That's a really cool looking machine gun.
Dude's like, I don't need camouflage. I'm just going to rock a white MP5.
Yeah, it's so dumb. There's dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of figures in that line that come with rockets and missiles and jetpacks that shoot missiles and stuff. And Dial Tone's got a, actuating microphone.
And it's great, and we love it. My worst figure in the line, it was almost sci-fi. Once again, Drew, the neon. The neon. But my worst figure actually goes to version 2 of Roadblock.
Really?
Because version 1 of Roadblock was so great. They nailed it with version 1. I think version 2, again, there's just like a little too much bright colors in there.
See, this is the one I always think of when I think of Roadblock.
You see, I always think of the classic, the camouflage tank top and the original. Like, I just think they nailed it on the first one. I never.
All right.
The version 2 of it never did anything for me.
Actually, now that you pointed this out,
version 2 for me felt like conformist Roadblock.
He sold out.
How many versions of Roadblock were there? Because that wasn't the last one.
If we tumble down this rabbit hole on Yojo.com, it's going to be a long night. So many. by 94, there were seven, especially in the later years when they were basically trying to introduce new designs of classic characters to try and maintain interest in the line. So,
yeah.
Anyway.
And they just started repainting existing molds.
Yeah, that too.
Tiger Force, Python Patrol.
Yeah, I never cared for any of that. I don't think we need to get into the later years, but I did actually go through every single year, and I picked out some favorites from every year. So if we ever want to have that discussion, I have a list, and I will defend some figures in those later years that were still strong, although the line as a whole suffered very badly.
87 and 88 were still great years for me. 87 had Big Boa, Crocmaster, the Dress Blues version of Gung Ho, Jinx, another ninja, Law and Order, another guy with a dog, and then Raptor, guy who dressed up like a bird.
Yeah, I looked at that. That one almost made my list, and Raptor probably would have been not only the worst on the list, might be in the conversation for worst all time.
He's in the conversation.
Yeah, and so that's where 10-year-old Dan Larson started to realize he was an action figure fan and didn't really care about whether or not it fit into the mythology of G.I. Joe.
Oh, okay.
I gotcha.
I was just like, a guy dressed as a bird, I'm game, I'm in, let's do this. 88 introduces Budo, the G.I. Joe samurai. Of course they need a samurai, that dude's awesome. And the Hydro Vipers, who designed that? That like stingray helmet, devilfish, whatever that helmet was supposed to be.
Yeah.
He looked like a supervillain character. He looked like somebody that, Daredevil or, Wolverine would be fighting. He didn't look like a guy who was part of a, terrorist organization.
He had that webbed hand, too.
I loved it.
Yeah, like I was looking at the later waves too, and like you mentioned, Drew, like even the later waves were as a whole were not great. There are always like standouts in each one, like Road Pig.
And he's not even that late. I mean, he's mid, but
88.
He's
Here's Budo and Hydro Vipers.
But what was the one we were talking about the one night? The Urban Viper?
Alley Viper.
Alley Viper.
I love Alley Viper. I love every version of Alley Viper.
Yep.
Orange and blue.
Another character.
What's he camouflaging again?
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But he's another one whose machine gun was awesome. Like, I loved his gun.
Yep.
Yeah.
That was another one. Just came with a bunch of gear, and he had a riot shield and a visor that opened.
Yeah.
It was just...
It seems like
that guy.
It seems like for the three of us, the way to our hearts was gear. Give us a lot of stuff with our figures.
Well, and it had to be unique stuff. Later on in the 90s, they started putting in the weapons that were on the actual sprue. They were still connected to the plastic sprue, and so everybody was basically getting a different neon colored sprue of stuff, and it was all the same stuff.
Yeah.
And even though that was a lot of stuff, it wasn't unique to that character, and that's where it kind of started to get watered down, and everybody was losing interest.
I was actually interested to find when I was looking at this that there was a point where I kind of stopped buying figures, but for a couple waves afterwards, I was buying vehicles. Because the vehicles, I think, like, again, there were some duds in there, but the vehicles kept being interesting and whatnot. The one that springs to mind, the one vehicle I've always loved is the Cobra Bug.
The Bug.
The Bug. Look it up in the vehicles. Dan, are you familiar with the Bug?
Oh, sure, yeah. Bug has a great driver with a nice glass dome helmet. He looks like a more appropriate Deep Six. He's
like a more
He's
functional
got the glass
Deep
dome
Six.
helmet. Yep.
But the Bug could do so much. Like
sure, they packed a lot. Those were like rolling playsets.
Yeah, like it had a detachable sub. You got some jet skis with it. Drew, I'm going to say something you might find heretical.
Yeah.
The Bug could do more than the Flag.
I mean, probably, but it still wasn't as impressive.
Well, I mean,
Certainly not.
Yeah, from a sheer mass proportion, no, it wasn't. But the vehicles and whatnot, I felt kept a certain level of creativity that just kind of lost in the figures. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Well, folks, that does it for our list. And Dan, I think we're going to get you out of here on this. We definitely appreciate your time again, sir. By all means, tell the people where they can find Toy Galaxy, where they can find you in the social media multiverse.
Absolutely. Primarily, we are on YouTube. If you just search for Toy Galaxy, you'll find us. The specific address would be youtube.com/ToyGalaxyTV. Producer Greg and I are both on Twitter. He is Toy Galaxy TV. I am Toy Galaxy Dan. I'm most active on Twitter and Instagram. My Instagram is Toy Galaxy. And then, of course, you can get us on patreon.com/Toy Galaxy.
All right. Awesome. Dan, thank you so much again for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
Okay, folks, that's going to do it for us here at the courthouse. We appreciate you stopping by and hanging out with us again. Big thank you again to Dan Larson of Toy Galaxy for giving us some of his time and a great discussion. We had a lot of fun doing those lists. Yeah, we're all kind of in the same ballpark, but you got to remember we're all kind of in the same age range, and G.I. Joe kind of hit for us all at the same time and probably exited for all of us at kind of the same time. This was a lot of fun. We appreciate Dan coming on again.
Probably next time we talk to him to ask him about wrestling.
All right.
Such as.
All right, folks. If you want to send us any questions or comments to be read on the show, you can do so at the following locations. You can go to Twitter and follow us at Devils Do Pod. You can like our Facebook page at facebook.com/DevilsDoPod. You can email us at thedevilsdopod@gmail.com, or you can find all these resources available to you on our website, thedevilsdopodcast.com. And folks, before we go, I do just want to give you a reminder. If you like hearing our dulcet tones on the podcast, you can come and see us live Tuesday, February 5th at Iron Buffalo at 656 Millersport Highway in Amherst, New York. That's going to be a 7 o'clock start time. Come out, see us, join in the fun. William Waterose, owner-operator of Iron Buffalo, will be there. Might be doing some Star Wars Shakespeare reading. You never know. Crazy things might happen. So come see us. It's going to be a great show. That being said, Drew, any closing statements?
None, sir.
All righty. Let's get on out of here. Y'all have a good night. Court's adjourned.